Hey everybody, welcome to the Pound for Pound Leader Podcast. I'm Mike Kai, the host of the Pound for Pound Leader Podcast. I hope you're having a great week, no matter where you are in the world right now, whether you're in the Americas, you're in the Southern Hemisphere, you're in Europe or Asia. I'm so honored that you're listening to this podcast. I also want to say one more thing. We just completed our Pound for Pound Asia Summit, where we had almost 10,000 people from all over the world, especially in Asia, who had tuned in. I thought it was amazing. I'm so grateful for our team in Manila that began to run that for the very first time. And now we're gearing up for the Pound for Pound, Summit for South America. And South America is going to be amazing. If you know anybody that speaks Spanish, you know anybody that lives in that part of the world, it is going to be totally translated and it is going to be run out of Lima, Peru, but we're still calling it the Pound for Pound Principal Leader Summit, and it's going to be fantastic. We've got Pastor Robert Barriger from Lima, Peru. We've got Pastor Andreas Spiker. We've got Pastor Craig Rochelle from Life Church. We've also got Pastor Chris Mendez from Hillsong. He's got campuses in Brazil, in Argentina, in Mexico. There's so many different places. And also, Dr. Sam Chan from Avail Leadership is going to be there as well. I also want you to know that I'm coming out with a new book, and the title of the book is still undecided. It's worse than naming your child. I promise you. I already knew what my child is going to be called, all three of them. But man, when it came to this book, we are down to the birth certificate. The doctor's telling me, the state is telling me, you need to fill out this birth certificate. What is the name of this new book? And it is coming out really soon. But really, it's about how excellence accelerates everything. And you're going to want to be one of those first people that pre-orders that copy, because it's going to be amazing. The book is already written. I'm just stewing on a title, and I've got about 48 hours or so. By the end of the week, by the time you hear this podcast, the title will be in. This past weekend, I had the privilege and honor of interviewing one of my dearest friends, my brother. His name is Pastor Roger Archer from Motion Church, all the way in Puyallup in the Seattle-Tacoma area. He is a brilliant speaker, leader, strategist, and one of my closest friends. And in fact, we had so much content in that interview that we decided that we would make it 2 different podcasts. That's right, 2. So you're going to hear him on part 1, you're going to hear it again in part 2, and it is going to be incredible. He leads a growing congregation, ever growing, and he is one of the churches that decided that they would open before the government said that they could. Now, after doing his homework and doing his data, you'll hear his reasoning why. But also, he opened in June, much to the chagrin of his state and local government. But he is backed up by the Constitution, and I'm very, very proud of him. You know, like in Hawaii, we were able to open in April. In California, Washington, Oregon, they were not able to open. And some parts of the world, you're not able to open right now. We're praying for you as well. But this is one guy that the Lord impressed upon his heart to do things a little bit contrarian. Aside from that, he already was a great leader, still is a great leader, and you're gonna love his insight on leadership on this broadcast. Take a look, take a listen, and I'll meet you at the end. Well, everybody, welcome to the podcast. This is Mike Kai. Thank you so much for joining us on the Pound for Pound Leader Podcast. And I have the one and only Pastor Roger Archer from Puyallup, Washington, and his church is called Motion. And man, that church is always in motion. Great things happening. One of my closest friends, if not my closest friend in all the world, best friend.
I love it.
Sounds like that, the courtship of Eddie's father, if you go that far back.
Dating ourselves.
And yes, we are. And here he is in the room, he just preached. He's preaching more tomorrow. We had a good pastor's retreat on the Big Island, and here we are today. I'm interviewing him in this leadership podcast. I want to welcome you, Roger, to the leadership podcast.
Thanks for having me, Mike. We respect greatly what you and Lisa have done with Inspire Church over the last 21 years, and the countless tens of thousands of lives that will forever owe their eternal souls to you. Great job.
Thank you. It's good to have you.
Great to be here.
Yeah. So, Roger, how long you've been pastoring? 21 years. I've been pastoring my church for 19 years. How has that been in the first, let's talk about the first 20.
Yeah.
And let's talk about last year.
Yeah. So we had 23 year anniversary.
Oh, 23.
Yeah. And, we started, like you guys did, very, very humbly and very alone and very afraid. And that kept us on our knees and kept us humble and kept us seeking Jesus and keeping him core. So we've always stayed small in our own eyes and not gotten too quick with our feet, but just really have tried to take care of the people. And that's one of the first prophetic words the Lord gave us, is that if you take care of the people, I'll take care of everything else.
That's awesome.
And so the first 20 years, 22, 23 years, 22 years were really, it was a whirlwind.
Right.
But then last year, the engine died and it stopped. I mean, for 90 days, we did not meet. And we came to a decision in June because we were closed at March. So for 90 days, we were closed because they had said this was a pandemic. And we know that the last 5 pandemics going back to 1325 killed, the bubonic plague killed 25 million people in the 13th century. Right. And the Spanish flu killed 65 million people. So we weren't messing around. Wow. We said, if this is what it is.
Right.
But then we saw the numbers coming back and we said, I wonder if this might be more of an epidemic or an endemic rather than a pandemic. And our church leadership got together and said, we really believe we need to reopen. So we sent notifications to the governor, the health department, L&I, all the appropriate offices, and said, we're going to meet. And so we've been meeting since June, and it's really been a bumpy ride governmentally. Right. But it's been a fluid, phenomenal ride spiritually.
So your government, along like California and other parts of our great United States of America, have not allowed for in-person gatherings in buildings. They have been distance and outside.
Right, correct.
In Hawaii, a little bit different story. We were able to open right about Easter, and still with the social distancing and different tiers, and we've progressed, and like we finally got back maybe 60% of our former numbers. Yeah. When you think about that, when was the last time we would celebrate 60%? Right. If we had 60% of 100% 2 years ago, we would think the ship is sinking, church is over, right. Find a new pastor, what's wrong with our leadership, what's going down. Right. But now the celebration of, with everything that's happened, you get 60% back, old growth and new growth, and some people probably never coming back, and most are eventually gonna come back if they get the vaccine. Here you are taking a stand in your state and you're going, God told me to open, we're gonna open.
Right. Yeah, because I believe the national average numbers are coming in at about 22 to 27% of churches that have reopened of their year-over-year attendance.
Yeah, wow.
And so the fact that you guys are pushing 60 is quite astonishing, because that's quite remarkable, because that's not the norm. That's like the 1 percentile.
We'll take it.
Yeah, take it, right?
I'll take it all.
Take it. Yeah.
So with that said, though, Roger, where are you guys at right now? So if we're at 60, but
I think
what's it look like in yours?
Yeah, ours is very intriguing because we still can. Well, just recently we can meet. Okay. But it's with registration, with masks and social distancing, and we just did away with all of that from the beginning, because we did the science ourselves, and so I don't need to go into all of that. But we did our due diligence, we did our homework, we did our digging, we found out what we needed to find out. Yeah. And so, it's been met with a lot of reticence, a lot of opposition, but then also the people that are super hungry. So I'll put it in these terms. In 90 days that we didn't meet and we were all online, 6 people came to know Jesus. Since June, we've had 1,100 people. Wow. That have come to know Jesus. Wow. 1,100 new first-time converts to Christianity. That's amazing. And so that coming to people, when people were like isolated, they became desperate. Yeah. And they were soul searching and trying to find a sense of themselves. Right. Which, maybe was a blessing in disguise. Okay. And so we have a whole, almost, I think it's about 50% new people. 50% new people. Wow. And so some of the people that used to come don't come, or don't come at all, like you were saying. Yeah. But then other people have just come to Christ. Yeah. In this tide, in the tsunami, if you will, of salvation. So it's pretty amazing to watch. That's amazing. So going back when you started in 23 years ago, you and Tina started. You have 3 babies at that time? 3 babies. 3 babies.
And I remember the stories that you would tell going back. So let's go back like the Last Dance. You go to the forward, you go to the past, and you come to the forward, and you come to the past. And in that series, I remember one of the things of going back was talking about your church in 23 years ago starting, and you started by having services, or what kind of odd job did you have at that time?
Yeah, that was fascinating because, I came to a T in the road because we didn't have a sending church. And I couldn't bring myself to write letters to my family members and ask them for money. I don't know maybe it was pride, I don't know, but I just couldn't, I couldn't do it.
Right.
So I still had 3 babies, still needed to make a mortgage, still needed to live.
Right.
So then I came to a crossroads. Do I go bivocational and go, sell commodities or sell insurance and pastor, or do I just pastor? And so I prayed and the Lord said, no, you need to focus on pastoring people. And I thought, okay, but Lord, how in the world am I going to do this? I'm in traffic and I'm frustrated, as we all are in traffic, right? And I'm like, what the heck is going on up there? It was a funeral procession. I felt convicted because I was so angry about being, held up, but it was a hearse. And I followed the hearse because the Lord said, follow the hearse. It went to a funeral parlor and I'm like, why am I here, Lord? And the Lord said, go in. So I go in and the funeral director comes up to meet me and he says, are you the officiant? I said, no, I'm not. And he said, well, the officiant's not here. What do you do? I said, well, I happen to be a pastor. He says, well, would you? I said, of course. So I officiated this funeral for these people and they just loved me. And the guy writes me a $200 check. And I thought to myself, So I went to 3 funeral homes and took my business model and said, if you'll let me, I'll be your guy. Because whenever people die without a pastor, they have to rent a pastor. Because funeral homes love doing funerals and they hate officiating them at the same time. So they always have to get these outside rent-a-pastors. Right. So I became the rent-a-pastor. 1998. So I got to where I was doing 35 to 40 funerals a month.
Wow.
I slid into this mild depression.
I would too. You slid into a mild depression.
Pump the brakes, man. Pump the brakes. But that's for the first 3 years. That's how we fed our family.
It's so rough.
Oh, it was brutal. It was brutal. But I got to pastor hurting people, and our whole church was really built on people in grief and heartbreak, and we got to reignite them into hope.
I think you're one of the most compassionate people I know.
Thank you.
I'm not saying that just because everybody's here and this is a podcast. Believe it or not. I mean, you can believe it or not. This is one of the most compassionate men I've ever met in my life. A lot of people have sympathy. A lot of people have empathy, but he has compassion. And compassion is all of that in action. I've seen it. For 20 years, at least 20 years, because it's been in my life for 20 years. You're awesome in that sense, Roger.
Thank you.
In many ways, you're awesome, but in that sense, you're awesome. I also think you're a genius. I think you're a genius in the sense of, you know how you have creative geniuses and they're just a little bit different? You're just a little bit different. You know that.
Yeah.
You're like...
A little different.
Yeah, a little different. Yeah. Your synapses in your brain, whatever they're called, are firing, and you have a wealth of knowledge and information, and all of your friends and I know it, that you are a genius. We don't know what scale there is, but there's a scale.
Thank you.
It may not be necessarily an IQ scale. Yeah. It could be that and all of it put together. I just think you're brilliant. So when you see everything that's gone on, you've started a church, you've had highs and a few lows, and highs and a few lows. Right. And then we all get hit with the pandemic, endemic, whatever it is called today, in 2020. Here we are, 2021. What challenges and opportunities, Roger, do you see for the future of the church? Yeah. Challenges and opportunities.
Well, I think the church will never be the same again, ever, and it shouldn't be. I think that this is a defining moment in the life of the church, because the challenge is going to be for people to go back to normal. But if people go back to that, they'll be alone.
Right.
Because no one's going to go back to normal.
Yeah.
That's over. That ship has sailed. Right. So the challenge is going to be people willing, especially as we age. Sometimes we can get a little more rigid, but we have to be willing to see the new paradigm that God is bringing on the landscape of the church. Right. So that's a challenge. I think just fighting our own sense of, man, I just wanted to go back the way it was. But
it's not going back.
It's never going
back.
back.
I hate to say it. It's not going to go back.
It can't.
No.
Because once we've dipped our toe in this water, especially with the online platforms, right? We've been doing online platforms for 12 years now.
Yeah.
So this is not new to us. It's just always been ancillary.
Yeah.
But some people have come into this and said, oh my gosh, I can work 70% less and still have the same amount of results. Why would I? And so there's those internal battles that people are fighting in their own self of like, how do I do this? So I think there's a challenge with us as leaders, we as leaders personally.
Yeah.
But then I think opportunity-wise, we've had hard things. We've had, when 9/11 hit, it hit a certain section of the people. When the tsunami hit Thailand, it hit a certain section of the people. When there have been earthquakes in Japan, they've hit a certain section. This hit all 7 billion of us. Mm-hmm. No one is unscathed.
Right.
And so everybody that I've talked to across the continents, they've all had that sense of cabin fever and isolation and being locked down and being masked up and being restricted. And people have they've seen the underbelly of themselves. And when they see that, they become ashamed because they don't know what to do with it because they've masked it with distractions.
Yeah.
Well, you couldn't go to a ball game. You couldn't go to a movie. You can't go to a bar. You can't go to a club. You can't do anything but go home.
Right.
And so these people have become so broken and so fractured. The fruit that was high up on the branches have come down to reach, of arm's length reach. It's an opportunity now.
Right.
These opportunities, because people are so broken with no disguises and no barriers. I'm broken, I'm messed up, give me something.
Yeah.
So random conversations at an airport baggage claim, at a restaurant, in a post office, at a dry cleaners, people are more open to the gospel now, Mike, than I've ever seen in all my life with Jesus.
Wow. It's
there.
Yeah.
It's there for the taking.
Yeah. Very inspiring. I've seen him in action at airports. I've seen him in action. He's amazing. Airports, restaurants, you name it. This guy has so much confidence in the message of Christ and in his ability to convey that message to people that he steps outside of personal whatever boundaries that you might have. He's like, I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to bring up Jesus, or I'm not going to even say hi to people. You have none of that. It's like you're looking.
Yeah.
You look like you're looking.
Yeah.
And I feel a little embarrassed about me not necessarily always looking all the time. You know what I mean? But you're always looking, and it's pretty powerful, pretty amazing. So when you see that for the future of the church is different. Growth opportunities, the low-hanging fruit now. People are more open to the gospel than ever before. Right. But I wonder if leaders who are watching this are thinking, actually, because of what's happening politically, I don't think people actually want it.
Yeah. Yeah, but I think that is a contrarian, opposite, deflection strategy of the enemy.
Okay.
I think
right.
I think with the political turmoil and unrest. Yep. Now, here's what I always play. If I were the devil, if I were the enemy of humanity,
screw tape letters.
What would I do? I would do that. Right?
Yeah.
Because if you just peel back the layer, this little veneer right beneath the surface of what is perceived is actual.
Right.
Because sometimes your perception becomes your reality, but sometimes your perception is your deception. Right? Like in 1491, it was scientific dogma. The earth was flat.
Flat as a pizza.
1492, that scientific dogma, not true. In the 15th century, Galileo proved that the earth was not the center of the universe. Because before that, everyone believed the earth was the center of the universe. Yeah. So imagine what will be true tomorrow, right? These scientific dogma think of how the perception of reality and humanity is going. Yeah. It's a false perception, I believe. Because I believe that the enemy wants people to be social distanced and spiritual distanced. I believe the enemy wants us to be spiritually distant from people at arm's length because that keeps them bound and lost. Right. But if we would just simply, and we don't have to be belligerent and we don't have to be clever. Right. We don't have to be a wordsmith. We just have to love and care for people. It's just the simplicity of the gospel.
Inviting people to church And then the next step is, even if you want to, is asking them if you can pray for them.
Yeah.
I bet most pastors aren't even willing to do that. Personal,
Yeah.
one-on-one.
One-on-one. In the marketplace.
In the marketplace.
And people are, people I found, I've probably, now this is going to be an estimate, but I would imagine in the last 8 months, I have inquired of people respectfully.
Right.
You watched me do that with that guy and his girlfriend in the airport.
Yeah.
Just respectfully, would you mind if I pray for you? Probably in excess of 1,000 times. That's not an exaggeration.
1,000 times in...
It might be more.
In what span?
In the last 10 months.
In the last 10 months.
Probably 1,000 people. That's like, I'm going 100 people. I'm just like, everywhere I go.
That's why you're growing.
That's where we're going. Because I'm saying, may I pray for you? And guess what? I have never been turned down. Not one time.
I'm surprised they didn't turn you down.
Not even once.
I wasn't and I was.
Yeah.
Right? I wasn't and I was.
Yeah.
He was open. She seemed a little open, but not open, but yes, right?
Yeah.
And I did reach out to him today. I sent him a text.
Good.
And I said, you can watch us online or come in.
Great.
So be aware though. They might come in today, tomorrow, this weekend.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Middle note for my message. Mike.
Yeah. And I told him I got a book for him.
Great.
And I got a book for you. It's called The Pound for Pound.
Great book.
Principle, Leadership Edition, 10-year anniversary version. But Roger, I want to ask you another question. So
yeah.
I'll look at these, but I was just wondering, what do you think, what is a right amount of percentage of your energy, the church's energy, goes to your staff's energy, rather, going to online versus in person?
Yeah, that's a great question, because we've actually done a breakdown to make sure that we have, I'll put it in terms of nutrition, a balanced diet.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So we want, if you take the philosophy of our church, because your philosophy drives your pragmatism, your why drives your what.
Right.
Right? Tail wag dog.
Yeah.
No.
Dog
wag tail. Right?
Right.
So if you slice a 360 circle, 50% of the church, energy, money, time, seekers. 16% believers, 16% disciples, 16% teachers. And that's how we slice the pie. So now when we break this down further into technology versus tactile, we want high tech with high touch.
Okay.
Because many people are doing one in lieu of the other.
Right.
High tech, high touch. So here's what I believe is good nutrition. I believe 75% of our energies, monies, time, resources needs to be tactile, and 25% needs to be focused on in tech. And now, again, this is subjective. This is not science. This is not right or wrong. This is just, you asked the question, this is my answer.
Right.
So for us, I want 75% of our thrust to be like, we're going to be meeting with people face to face in their space, listening to the words they don't say between the lines because we're looking in their eyes. And then I want to be the best I can possibly technologically. We want to have the very best gear, the very best producer. We have a room full of, you don't see this, but we have three beautiful, brilliant people that are producing and directing this, this would not happen if their seat was not filled.
Yeah.
So I want to train and equip, recruit, launch, send, and enable and empower with 25% of my resources. Those people that are going to do that arm.
Yeah.
So it's a 75-25.
That's awesome. Awesome. What do you feel the church needs to do differently in order to the church to continue to move forward? And if so, how?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm not sure that I know the answer to that, because I think that it's such an enormous question. I think there is a thing or two. Other things that I think we must do, we must pray more than we've ever prayed before. And I think sometimes we can get so locked into the nuts and bolts that we lose sight of the foundational. You cannot sell short. Like, what do you want God to do? Do you want him to bring people? Do you want him to bring revival? Do you want him to bring the broken? Or do you want him to bring the clean, the put together, the buttoned up, and the wealthy? Like, what do you really want? And then we need to really begin to ask Jesus for it.
Yeah.
And get people in groups of this. You'll love this. Maybe. We have our council retreat, which is our elders, and we have a staff retreat. And those staff retreats and elder retreats are 3 days. The first 30 minutes, we wake up in the morning, we get coffee. Well, I don't get coffee because I don't drink coffee, but those that do. But the first 30 minutes of the day, we spend praying in the Spirit. We pray in the Spirit for the first 30 minutes. And then we worship for 30 minutes. And then we'll sit down and have a meeting. And we'll break down. I just think that's what's going to be new. The new paradigm of the church is going to be Spirit-led, Spirit-driven.
Yeah.
And not bright or brilliance-led or strategy-driven. I think it's going to be just this wave of the Spirit leading the church. And I think the people that do that are going to see the harvest like never before.
Awesome. Yeah. No, I love it. So what is one of the greatest leadership lessons you've learned or you are watching in the past year?
I think being a student, I think being teachable, just listening. Because sometimes people get especially people that are accomplished and polished. I mean, you and I, when we were first starting out 23 years ago in Wayne Cordero's practicum, 20 years ago, there's nobody that cared what we had to say. But now that we're like our age and our churches are their size, there's a couple people, maybe in the country that might have more pop, bang, and pow than us. And so as you rise in prominence, the hardest and the biggest challenge that we face in our humanity is to be teachable and to be humble and let anybody lean in. Because other people have great perspectives and it might even be personal directly toward us.
Right.
Like, hey, you need to augment this. You need to change that. Have you ever considered this? I go to my students. We're a Southeastern University extension site. And I'll go to my students and I'll take them out to lunch. I'll say, hey, what's one of the things you like best about me being the pastor of this church? And they don't see the other shoe coming, right? But they'll go, oh, pastor, you and they'll give me this affirmation. Then I'll say, now, if there's something that you think that I really need to grow in because I'm struggling and not very good at it, what would that be? These are 18-year-olds. They're looking at me and looking at the ministry and looking around going like, oh, I'm not qualified. I go, no. You're perfectly qualified.
Wow.
And then I let them lean in to something in me that maybe is a blind spot or the king that has no clothes. Yeah. I think I got it wired and dialed, but they see something from their generational lens that I don't see. And so I think learners and listeners are gonna set the stage for.
I think you're really in tune with pop culture. I think you're really in tune with the next generation. I mean, you drop lyrics that I don't even know. You know what I'm saying? And there are people that are cracking up that are young. They're like 23 years old and they're laughing because they get like, I can't believe Papa Rock is dropping lyrics.
That's my name, Papa Rock.
They call him Papa Rock because all of the grandkids call him Papa Rock, and even his nephews and nieces, spiritual sons and daughters, children call him Papa Rocks. Yeah. Anyway, you're the best, bro.
Wow, wasn't that a great conversation so far? Get ready for part 2 next week. And I hope you're encouraged by the leadership insights of Pastor Roger Archer. The second part of our interview is just as insightful. As a matter of fact, I actually think it goes deeper. Roger and Tina have been leading their church for almost 23 years in the Puget Sound area of basically Puyallup in Seattle, Tacoma. Love them with all of my heart. So hey everybody, this past week we had an incredible pound for pound leadership summit in Asia. If you missed it, don't worry, you can watch the replay for free at www.mikekai.tv. And then get ready for South America, because that one's coming up in April and it is going to be phenomenal. If you know anybody that speaks Spanish, it's also going to be in English. You're going to want it. If you haven't yet done so, pick up my book, The Pound for Pound Principle, at my website, along with other great leader resources like the Masterclass digital course that has 16 sessions of leadership content. It's all fresh, and make sure you get that as well. So thank you again for joining me on the Pound for Pound Leader Podcast. Until next time, stay safe, stay aloha.